This video is sponsored by War Thunder, and this is Red Dead Redemption 2 at 720p, and this is it at 76p. This is all thanks to Special K. No, it isn't a breakfast cereal, I mean it is, but it's also a very powerful tool to override in-game settings and stuff. Using it, it can see that upscaling is running at 720p, and with just a quick slide of the button down to 92p, followed by a lengthy game restart, it now looks like this. This is going to be fun. So why is an override like this necessary? It's because games don't trust us. For some reason, they don't think we'll be sensible with this amount of raw power. Well, I take offense to that. I'm sick of experts telling me what I can and cannot do. I can stand on my own 2 feet, thank you very much. So I'm going to mess about and see how low we can go, and then I'm actually going to try and do something useful with my findings by trying to figure out how far you should go with upscaling, and whether the current default upscaling presets should be revised following how much better upscaling has become. But maybe you think all this upscaling and messing about with ludicrous settings is pointless. Maybe you just want to use your PC to play games. Then check out this video's sponsor, War Thunder, which with over 2,500 tanks, planes, ships and helicopters makes it one of the most comprehensive battle sims of all time, catering for PC users, console users on PlayStation and Xbox, and now even mobile players. With so much history, you can track how vehicular combat has advanced over the ages. Join over 95 million other players in an epic PvP battle today, featuring gorgeous graphics, upscaling support, ray tracing, and authentic sound effects, which all help to transport you into the fray, but with none of the risks. There is so much content to experience, so much stuff to unlock, you probably won't even have time to appreciate the fantastic optimization and the game's DLSS support, which I love for how it makes the trees and distant details so crystal clear, which is handy when there could be something lurking behind them. Manage to hit an enemy, have your kills rewarded with impressive X-ray damage, simulating in uncanny detail the full extent of the destruction your devastation has wreaked on the machine and its crew. With War Thunder, you can finally discover why every video of mine sponsored by War Thunder takes so long to make, because you two will probably go off on many lengthy tangents to see if the next game you play could be the one where you turn the tide. Maybe next time, and the time after that, and again and again and again. Check out this video's description or pinned comment for a link to play the game for free. And for gamers on PC or console, then use my code and you can get a massive bonus pack featuring 100,000 Silver Lions, 7 days of premium free, experience boosters, and much, much more, provided you're a new player or haven't played in the last 6 months. And have fun! Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a really great game to mess about with this sort of stuff, since it would change the settings in real time instead of needing a lengthy game restart every time to kick in. It's also just a really great game, just like War Thunder. So yes, this is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at 38 by 22 pixels. That's a 1% resolution, but bear in mind it's just 1% in both dimensions, so multiplying 0.01 by 0.01, that's more like 1/10,000th the number of pixels that native has. As you might expect, it doesn't look quite as good as native would. In fact, it does a very good job of becoming Forgot My Glasses simulator. The image was blurry, fizzy, quite unpleasant, but there is reason to playing like this, because it gives us an insight into how DLSS actually operates, because we can have a really good look at them individual pixels here. But there's still no better example of how DLSS uses motion vectors than this video on YouTube, where it all breaks down in the game control, leading to a surreal trip through what looks like static. None of the lighting or textures are being displayed, so you'd imagine the game would be completely unreadable. Yet because of all the movement data, you can still quite easily make out the shape of the world and its characters. This is what DLSS uses to enable its magic. It just sticks whatever new details it renders every frame onto this and lets it slide about like watercolours for a while. This means that while frame by frame the resolution being rendered is very low, after just a fraction of a second it's collected quite a lot of data onto this flowing art display. And more advanced upscaling solutions in DLSS versions simply get better at knowing where to put all that stuff, how to decipher each and every pixel, and crucially, when to remove old data once it's no longer needed, which helps avoid trails behind moving objects and the like. Running Red Dead Redemption 2 at a very low resolution, you can see this renewal of old data around the edges of the cart. The whole screen's a blobby, shimmering mess, but this is especially noticeable around the sides of the cart. It looks like a waterfall pouring around it. This is because it's a tricky area for upscaling to manage, since new but low-res details are constantly emerging, but old and outdated details constantly need to be removed, while somehow retaining the shape of the object that's moving. At this super low resolution, it creates an abstract, wavy kind of effect, which looks kind of ridiculous, but still a lot better than were this resolution not being upscaled. And that's something you need to remember for the rest of this video. Upscaling doesn't have to look as good as the resolution it's upscaling to in order to have value. It merely needs to look better than whatever low resolution it has of similar performance to. And if the upscaled version punches above its weight in terms of clarity and anti-aliasing, then it's making better use of your PC's resources. I mean, here it's not even close, is it? I can't believe how bad 136 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 76 pixels looks without upscaling of any sort. And this is using huge amounts of downsampling, so it's practically a best case scenario for how such a low resolution could look without upscaling. Returning to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 now, if I turn in circles and slow down the recording, you can see how freshly exposed areas of the image appear as large blocks. Individual pixels, if you will. Then, as that area gains more and more samples, the blocks fade and shrink until they become, well, still not acceptable, but a lot less pixelated than you might expect from a resolution of 38 by 22. That's what this resolution without upscaling looks like, just in case you were interested, compared with this being upscaled. Dare I say you could play in this way if you hated yourself enough? But I don't. So we'll gradually increase the resolution now, and as we do, the world slides into focus and the fizzing becomes less and less noticeable. Eventually, by about 20% scaling, I'd say it's bordering on perfectly acceptable, which is crazy when we used to think 50% scaling was overly ambitious. Yet at 20%, it's got just 4% of the pixels the resolution would suggest. Mental. So at what percentage scaling does this fizzing go away entirely? Never. This fizzing will always be there, no matter how high you ramp up the resolution. It's just it eventually gets to the point where it's so not noticeable it might as well not be there. So it's cool that I feel like it gets to that stage long before even the lowest of the built-in DLSS presets kick in, which suggests to me that they could be lowered, especially when gaming at higher resolutions like 8 or 4K, which right here is being made from 778 by 438 pixels. Which isn't even HD. In my previous video where I played Red Dead Redemption 2 at ultra low resolutions, the problem I really had with it was the clarity of the HUD and the menus and stuff, which when limited to the built-in upscaling presets, simply weren't big enough to be able to read, even when displayed at the full post-upscaled resolution. Like this, for instance. Running the game at 137 by 77 and upscaling from that as much as possible, using the Ultra Performance preset, I got an end result of 410 by 231. And even though the HUD was being rendered at that full post-upscale resolution, that still wasn't enough to be able to read the icons, let alone the text and which buttons I had to press. People died as a result. In-game. But here, using the same resolution but upscaling all the way to 4K, it allows the HUD itself to now be displayed in crisp, clean 4K. And even the game itself, which is still being upscaled from the same super low base resolution as before, I think still looks a lot better, proving that there is more detail to be extracted by using even more extreme upscaling presets than what's currently provided to us in these games by default, even if I still wouldn't recommend gaming like this. Consoles, for instance, could benefit from this. Even if they can't run a game at full 4K, having an end resolution of 4K will at least extract the maximum value out of the upscalers they use for the gameplay footage, whilst allowing the HUD and menus and text on screen to look crisp and sharp at full 4K, which goes a long way towards making the experience more enjoyable than were it merely to max out at 1080p or 1440p. I can get why people feel it's a bit dishonest for a game to claim that it's 4K when the game itself is running at a much lower resolution, but the concept of a fixed resolution has been alive for a long time already. Stuff like light beams, clouds in the sky, and aspects of shadows in the scene are often already being rendered at a lower than native resolution, even when upscaling isn't being used. Modern games rely on so many tricks and shortcuts simply because they strike a better balance between quality and performance on existing hardware. So I see upscaling as being merely an additional tool to strike that ideal balance, shifting the quality-performance compromise upwards. In fact, consoles did it first. They had something called checkerboard rendering, where it rendered every other pixel then blurred it all to hide this effect. As a PC user, I was jealous of it. For years I wondered why we didn't have something similar. The closest we had was Rainbow Six Siege, which had a PC version of checkerboard rendering, and it was highly praised for how well it ran at the time. I wonder why. Although there was a weird era where TVs had much higher resolutions than computer monitors seemingly wanted to support. I really felt like we PC users got a bum deal. Which is still the case with HDR, which consoles seem to have figured out years ago, yet PC games today still really struggle to support it properly. But yeah, years after checkerboarding became a thing, along came DLSS. And I think people have forgotten why DLSS was needed. Back then, upscaling wasn't a thing. Neither was ray tracing. It was all about anti-aliasing and in smoothing the look of pixels. The golden standard for this was super sampling, which was essentially the opposite of upscaling, where it made a nice looking image by brute forcing several pixels into every one. But this came at a severe performance cost because it meant running the game at a much higher resolution than your monitor was displaying. What people liked to use was MSAA, which did super sampling but only along the edges of things, which still made it demanding to run, but not quite as much as super sampling. And then you had post-process effects like TAA, which just blurred the image. These became increasingly relied upon in modern games, which had engines which didn't work well with MSAA, something people seem to forget these days. And trying to use MSAA in modern games just leaves many sharp edges unsmoothed. So DLSS sought to provide the best of all worlds by smoothing all of the edges, but without the performance impact, while still attempting to match the golden standard of anti-aliasing set by super sampling, hence this bit of its name, which I shan't utter here. As time has gone on, we now take for granted that upscaling will nicely anti-alias the image, and it's become more of a question of how low we can drop the resolution before that's no longer the case. In this respect, upscaling has become a victim of its own success, because people just take for granted many aspects of it that, were upscaling not a thing today, I think people would soon sorely miss. But I don't think it's any coincidence that it made its debut in the PC space alongside ray tracing, which is infamously demanding and increasingly so as the resolution increases. So upscaling wasn't invented with ray tracing in mind, it was done to help consoles hit higher resolutions. But upscaling has come in super handy in allowing for the transition to ray traced games long before the hardware might have been capable of doing so otherwise. And I really think ray tracing was a major reason for why Nvidia invested in DLSS upscaling so heavily. So I might as well show Cyberpunk, fully path traced at 4K, the holy grail of graphics rendering from now until, well, I was going to say forever, but it'll probably be until AI takes over everything. So running at full 4K, fully maxed out on path trace settings using a GeForce 5090, I'm getting a frame rate of 27 FPS average, which isn't acceptable. Even the most powerful graphics card in the world cannot handle this. But using 1080p, upscale to 4K using DLSS Preset L, suddenly I'm getting 83 FPS average. That's not just playable, that's really good. I'm not even having to enable frame generation to achieve it. Down to 720p now, and the frame rate rises to 111 FPS. The visual quality, I think, is still very good, because DLSS Preset L is so great that upscaling from 720p still looks sharp. But finally, at 360p, the image quality begins to drop off dramatically, and the frame rate only increases by 4 to 115, because I'm now CPU limited. Evidently, the sweet spot is somewhere between all of these presets. I get that current graphics cards and previous generations will run with compromises, especially with DLSS Preset L. But look to the future here, because future cards will be designed with the demands of Preset L in mind, and performance will only increase with every generation from here on upwards. Eventually, no compromise will be needed. Upscaling won't be required, and yet I still think it would make sense to use it, if not for better visuals or frame rates, then eventually just for lower power consumption. And if this route wasn't the future, I don't think all of the major companies would be investing so much into upscalers like DLSS, FSR, or XS, and would instead just be pumping all their efforts into more compute units and the like. And it's telling they're not doing that, because this is the future, or at the very least, the most sensible balance to be struck. But returning to which preset is most sensible to use right now, I think that really depends on your preference for such things. And that's why I think we should have a slider rather than set presets for something as important and as powerful as upscaling is. Because a sliding scale gives users more control, because different people will have different tolerances and preferences for what they deem to be the ideal balance to use. I did a video on this whole topic 5 years ago where I tested Death Stranding and Control at 240p. So why not revisit those games and settings now, but with newer forms of upscaling to see how far we've come. This was Death Stranding being upscaled from 240p at the time, compared with it now, still being upscaled from 240p, but to 4K using custom upscaling settings. There are still problems with trails behind those weird black particles in the sky, but I think the end result is much sharper, much crisper, the image stabler, and more detailed than it was 5 years ago. Maybe one day upscaling will become good enough that we can play this game at 240p without feeling like it's a compromise. But it's not quite reached that stage yet. And here's Control, back then at 240p. This was using a very early version of DLSS. And here it is again now, using the latest. I was still blown away by how it looked at the time, but look at how far we've come since. And some people still aren't happy. Intel has an upscaler called XS, and with a recent update they made the controversial choice to shift all of the resolutions down. The argument being that because the upscaler has improved, they could now produce similar looking results from a lower resolution. My issue with this was that it's no longer using the same resolutions as FSR or DLSS do at the same presets. In other words, XS has eaten into the improved upscaling to boost frame rate instead of image quality. The problem is that a lot of the time benchmarkers use a preset to compare graphics cards against each other, and this asymmetry between the different upscalers makes such comparisons disingenuous. But I'm coming around to the idea of doing something like Intel have done. But my suggestion is that we do away with the performance, balanced and quality presets and simply have a percentage slider that you can use to upscale from. Have a button for it to do it automatically for the people who don't want to dabble, but for the rest of us it will allow us to find the amount of scaling that looks acceptable to us. And it allows benchmarkers to benchmark different graphics cards and games based on image quality, rather than a word like performance or balanced, which no longer means anything anymore. I think that would be much fairer and would encourage improved upscalers without the need to hide behind names and presets. This is not upscaling. This was an experiment associated with video encoding. I was reminded of this when I saw the weird waterfall around the cart in Red Dead Redemption 2, but I think it's a sign of things to come. Upscaling is borrowing tricks from video encoding, like motion vectors and stuff, and I think the overlap between upscalers and video encoders is only going to increase. This is all now purely speculation, but eventually I think we'll have a universal AI-driven video upscaler, which will get YouTube videos, movies and games, anything on your screen really, and to run it through yet another layer of AI trickery to upscale the result even more. NVIDIA already has this. It's rather primitive right now, but it does make a difference and does make things look crisper without adding too many extra artifacts. But I think we're going to see more of these things moving forward, and they're going to become a lot more powerful. So I don't think the upscalers we have now are the best that we'll ever see. And just like when we look back 5 years and realise how far we've come already, maybe in another 5 years' time we'll come back to this video and we'll again realise how frighteningly quickly things have advanced. And again, thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring my content and for allowing me to justify dedicating literal weeks of my life to upscaling from silly resolutions. The game is free to play on PC, Xbox, PlayStation and mobile. Just check out the links in this video's description, and if you're new or returning after 6 months of inactivity on PC or console, you can claim the massive bonus pack for premium vehicles and other goodies. But be quick, it's around for limited time only.